Chapter 3. My Tormented Tormentor. Not long after Mum's secret rendezvous with Bill, Dad found out they'd been having an affair. To this day, I don't know how he learned of Mum's infidelity. However, Dad left Dee and me in no doubt that Mum had done something wrong when he lashed out at her in front of us. Despite the fact that his children were in the room, Dad rained blows on Mum, while Dee and I stood by, terrified, helpless and sobbing. I wish I could say this was the only time as a child that I'd witnessed Dad beating Mum up. Alas, I cannot. While he may have relieved his frustration towards her, time would reveal how thrashing my mother did nothing to deter her future behaviour. Furthermore, by lashing out at her in the way he did, Dad had begun to sow future seeds of resentment within me. Seeds which, once germinated, would pit us against each other and foment the kind of mutual animosity from which our relationship would never recover. On her part, Mum had embarked on a course of conduct which would alienate her not only from Dad's extended family, but eventually her own. Dad's younger sister, Jackie, whose husband had left her following an affair with Dad's first wife, had never taken to Mum, regarding her as devious and incapable of telling the truth. Mum cooked her own goose the day she telephoned Auntie Jackie to ask if she'd be Bill's escort to the annual Prudential staff party. Smelling a rat straight away, Auntie Jackie flatly refused and told Mum in no uncertain terms that she knew what her game was. One more incident would seal Mum's fate with her sister-in-law, and soon enough, that moment came. For someone who thought nothing of having sex with another man in the presence of her child, anything is within their capabilities. Therefore, when Auntie Jackie revealed to me years later the events that unfolded one afternoon around the time of Bill, I wasn't at all surprised. At that time, Auntie Jackie shared the family home at Campshill Road with her mother and father and her two teenage sons, Adam and Nicky, providing care for them all. Relying heavily on the financial support of her estranged husband Jim, Auntie Jackie received £6 per week towards the upkeep of both boys. Following Jim's weekly visit to drop off the £6, Dad, Mum, Dee and I came to visit. Within minutes of us leaving, Auntie Jackie went to check her purse and found the £6 missing and broke down in tears. When her father, Harry, heard her crying, he asked her what was wrong. Furious to learn of the betrayal, no sooner had Auntie Jackie revealed the theft to her dad than Harry rang our home and demanded to know who had taken it. Dad, in turn, confronted Mum, who revealed 3-year-old me to be the culprit. Fortuitously, my cousin Nicky had witnessed the theft with his own eyes, revealing that he'd seen my mum take it. Humiliated and suitably embarrassed, Dad drove straight back round to Campshill Road to return the pilfered money to its rightful owner. Consequently, to the accusations against Mum in Auntie Jackie's eyes of being devious and incapable of telling the truth, the charge of thief could be added. Despite what time would reveal to be an almost relentless succession of irresponsible and erratic behaviour following the Bill Stone saga, Mum and Dad would enjoy something of a reconciliation. Following their reunion, in an act which was dubbed the baby to save the marriage, Mum fell pregnant again. In September 1977, my younger sister Saskia, or Sass as she came to be called, was born. Prior to Sass's birth, during the summer of that year, we moved the short distance of less than a mile from Westdean Avenue to a new home on Gweebow Road in Lee. Situated at number 32, our house was actually located in a cul-de-sac off Gweebow Road. With its kitchen on the ground floor, living room and Mum and Dad's bedroom on the first floor, and our bedrooms at the top, our house at Gweebow Road had a very topsy-turvy feel. Like our previous house, this too was 3 bedrooms. However, all the rooms in our new home were noticeably bigger. So for now, by late 1977, the Hills family had moved home and gained another member in the form of little Sass. In addition, I joined Dee at Horn Park, starting in the infants for half days for the first term, while Dee began her first year at Horn Park Primary. Signalling the calm before the oncoming storm, the mood at home at that time felt particularly joyful. Central to the jubilation was, of course, our younger sibling. For one of the few times that I can recall, my parents appeared happy and united. There would be no better example of their joy than when they'd stand approximately 10 feet apart from each other and throw sass to and fro between them. While the little girl giggled with delight, I held my breath, afraid they might drop her. Alas, the joy of Sass's birth would be short-lived, as the period following her arrival would see a sudden escalation in my mother's behaviour, which took on a darker and more unwholesome dimension. Ordinarily a source of great fun for children, bath times for Dee and me of a Sunday night were no different. Following the hilarity of pulling our shampoo-thickened hair into bunny ears and sliding around a drained bath, we laid across Mum's lap so she could rub talcum powder into our skin. However, it was following bath time that my mother began to bite our bum cheeks. This was not a new occurrence and had in fact begun while we lived at Westdean Avenue. While I'm well aware of how playfulness between parents and their children can take many different forms, any kind of activity which causes a child harm cannot be considered playful. Even if my mother's original intent in what followed was playful, it did not end that way. Continuing an act which I later learned she inflicted on her own much younger siblings, Mum took to biting Dee and me on our arms. With me being the smaller child, I bore the brunt of the assaults each time my mother scooped me up from the lounge floor where I'd be playing, hold me to her chest and begin biting my arms. However, this was not playful biting, as Mum would sink her teeth deep into my skin. The depth of her bite was such that when she finally let me go, a wailing and quivering mess, through my tears I'd look down at my arms and see teeth marks embedded in my skin. Adding insult to injury, with my pleas to stop whenever she bit me going ignored, I'd begin hitting Mum in the face. As if to punish me for defending myself, in response she hit me back many times harder. Alas, I wish I could say that my father was on hand to protect us, but I cannot, even though he knew what had been going on. On a number of occasions during this time, I'd arrive along with Dad and Dee at the home of Auntie Grace with bite marks on my arm. With no confirmation needed on my part as to who was responsible, Auntie Grace told me to tell my mum that if she bites me again, she would come round and bite her. My teenage cousin Adam would find me in similar circumstances with bite marks up my arm. Offering me his comfort after having found me sobbing on my bed on one particular occasion, Adam reported back to his mum how she must have really hurt me. However, gratuitous biting would pale in comparison with what came next, which constituted the single most terrifying moment of my young life. Few who recall the most severe punishment they ever endured would forget what prompted it. While I had it in myself to be a naughty child, still to this day I cannot account for my mother's actions on the day in question. Yet, the shock of being grabbed by her so suddenly and so forcefully was such that before I knew what had happened, I was supine on her bedroom floor with a pillow hurtling towards my face. The next thing I knew, everything went black, and immediately I began to kick and scream. While Mum pressed down on the pillow, I continued to struggle in absolute terror. In what must have been no more than a minute, yet felt like an eternity, Mum suddenly let go of the pillow before running out of the room in tears. Feeling dazed and confused, I sat up and my tears began flowing with abandon. After having calmed down, I brushed sweaty hair from my face and made for the lounge, tears still rolling down my cheeks. What happened next goes against the human instinct for self-preservation, yet, in the context of a child's bond with a parent, makes perfect sense. At that very moment, the only thing I wanted to do was be comforted by my mother, the very person who had hurt me so brutally. Curiously, I'd witnessed the same inclination in other children many years later as part of my work in residential children's homes. Placed many miles away for their own protection from parents who only meant them harm, there were those among our young charges who'd abscond back to the very people who posed the greatest risk to their well-being. I wouldn't know it then, but in a little over 10 years' time, I'd find myself in similar circumstances to those children. For now, in need of her consolation, I went into the lounge and approached my mum, who was slumped in a chair, crawled under her arm and curled up beside her. While the extent of my mother's violence would never again reach such an extreme as this, as long as we were small enough to be treated in such a way, she would continue to do as her mood dictated. Although not as harrowing, my mother would show a similar level of aggression the day I came home as a 6-year-old, smelling of smoke after having had a cigarette shoved in my mouth by a group of older boys who collared me while out riding my bike. Grabbing me with one hand and a piece of off-cut wood in the other, my mother made me hold my arm out and thrash me across the wrist with it. While doing a kind of war dance and watching through tears as my wrist turned purple, I managed to tell Mum that the older boys shoved a cigarette in my mouth and told me to suck on it. Despite my confession, Mum continued thrashing me for not knocking on someone's door to tell them what the boys were trying to make me do. Needless to say that such a suggestion did not occur to me while surrounded by a group of menacing boys twice my height. Although like mine, her perspective and experiences are uniquely hers, both Dee and I endured similar assaults against us at that time and also subsequently. Even the most minor of provocations were met with a totally disproportionate level of force. Indeed, my mother would think nothing of picking up a pair of scissors and throwing them at us. A similarly favoured projectile took the form of her wooden-soled Dr. Scholl sandals, while on other occasions she would take to us with the kind of black flex cord which powered a portable cassette player before proceeding to whip us, prompting another war-type dance. Coupled with the ongoing biting of our bottoms and arms and the groping, Dee and I found ourselves on our guard very early on, having also learned quickly how to duck when some projectile came flying our way. Although it's true to say that abuse takes many forms, the neglect that Dee and I would experience in later years also had its roots during this time. My mother, while wanting a comfortable home in which to live, took no pride in maintaining it and did the minimum she could get away with to fulfill our basic needs. With Dad being the kind of man who expected his dinner on the table when he came home from work, Mum ensured that she at least fulfilled that obligation. Any others, such as tending house, were done sporadically and reluctantly. Indeed, two such glaring examples at that time were the condition of our toilets and my bed sheets. In the case of the former, our toilets became so thick with wee and poo-stained limescale that on the rare occasion any extended family members came to visit, they refused to use the toilet. As for my bed sheets, which I'd soil nightly, instead of replacing them with fresh ones, my mother took to placing my bedside lamp underneath the sheet and opening my bedroom window. Consequently, I went to sleep each night to the acidic odour of a urine-stinking sheet, only to wake up in the morning and find I'd soiled it anew. Furthermore, a similar odour would have hit anyone in the face who dared to open the laundry cupboard on the ground floor, as urine-soaked sheets were left to rot for months on end. However, my mother was not without a capacity to show care and attention. Indeed, she was never more attentive towards us than at Christmas, when she'd pull out all the stops to buy us the Christmas presents we wanted, and when we were poorly and off sick from school. Yet that is where the extent of my mother's care ended, and in the not-too-distant future, Dee and I would find ourselves alone, far away in another country where we had to fend for our own selves. Despite the trials and tribulations of home life, nothing made me happier at that time than riding off for hours on my Raleigh Budgie bicycle. Such was the way of parenting back in the 1970s that children would play out for hours on end without their parents knowing where they were or what they were up to. Therefore, I could ride far away on my bike for as long as I wanted, and so I freely indulged my singular and independent streak. However, being a fast runner like Dee, we also enjoyed the opportunity of playing out with the other kids of Gibao Road, indulging in such street games as British Bulldog, Hide and Seek, Knockdown Ginger, and Three Bad Eggs. Interestingly, it was about this time in the late 1970s when the most unexpected and thrilling moment of my life thus far occurred. Out on my bike one sunny day, I came to the end of Gibao Road as usual, poised to turn left before coasting down the hilly Wynn Road. For some unknown reason, I suddenly turned right. Just then, as I headed past a small green, I caught sight of a boy roughly my age playing alone on the grass. Drawn to him by the fact that I hadn't seen him before and wouldn't thereafter, I stopped and said hello. Having exchanged pleasantries and a mutual desire to want play, my new friend invited me to his house to see his newborn brother. Being well in practice at cooing to newborn babies, I cheerfully accepted. To my surprise, my friend's house, which could be seen from the green, was situated directly across the busy main road of Burnt Ash Hill. Within minutes, we were peering into the cot of his baby brother, who stared contentedly back at us as we shook the mobiles suspended above his cot. Just then, the sound of heavy footsteps distracted me, and as I turned towards the bedroom door, in bounded an enormous man, naked except for a towel in his hand, which he used to dry the back of his head. Clearly fresh from bathing, my friend's dad stopping briefly to see what we were doing before continuing to dry his mop of curly red hair. With the exception of my dad, I hadn't seen another man naked. Yet this man looked decidedly different to my dad, and I couldn't take my eyes off him as he continued to dry his hair. Each backwards and forwards motion caused the large muscles on his raised arms to jiggle. His hairy chest had a broadness to it quite unlike my father's, while his large penis dangled proudly between muscular thighs, and I found myself completely transfixed. For the rest of that day and on many occasions since, I've revisited that moment, which has remained so vivid in my mind. Although at the age of 6, I couldn't possibly have understood why it had excited me in the way it did, there would come a time in the future where I could relate an awareness of my orientation back to this one event. Furthermore, I'd become aware in time of the absence of similar feelings of intrigue and excitement about the naked female form. For now, however, I just wanted to be a happy boy, ride my bike and be free. Alas, until such time as my mother was no longer a part of my life, that would not be possible. You'd think I'd have learnt that by now, wouldn't you?
Upon my face, imagine what it's like to fly up to a happy place. Suddenly I'm on the move, the world is rushing by, going stratospheric, I'm headed for the sky, riding fast and far away, unburdened by the load. From my queen of pain, for I'm king of Wind Road. Can't catch me where I'm going to, a place I can't be hurt. My safety and my sanctuary, unsullied by your dirt. But relief is only for a time, and soon I must return to where I know I don't belong, and my skin begins to burn. Riding fast and far away, unburdened by the load. Freedom from my queen of pain, for I'm king of Wind Road. In the darkness once again, as clear as day I see, I belong near